I love how poetic this film's title is and how you worked the theme of closeness throughout the entire film using all the components of filmmaking, the colors, the movement and the framing of the camera. Sometimes the camera it's handheld, but we're completely there with the emotions of the characters and what they may be thinking, such as Leo practicing hockey. And then you have what I assume are longer lenses where you zoom in. And I was so pulled into those moments, like the first day of school, in Leo's admiration for Remi when he's playing music. So I'm curious about your thinking when it came to deciding when and where the theme of closeness would be illustrated, whether it's in the text or visually, no matter how subtle it might be.
Yes, thank you. That was a that's a very nice compliment to get. I mean, when I look at the bigger picture or when I look at the dramaturgy of the film, I wanted the first 15 minutes to be boys holding on to each other. There's this Walt Whitman poem that is also a David Hockney painting called We Two Boys Together Clinging.
Mm.
And I very much resonated with that for these first 15 minutes that are a little bit, this Garden of Eden, in the sense that there's this childhood connectedness in which love is still boundless and free and doesn't have any name other than love.
Right.
So I wanted the first 15 minutes of this film to be their worlds close to each other. This image of two boys in a bed as close as they possibly can. And then I wanted this first confrontation with the conscious and with this society in which there are labels and boxes and everyone has these expectations just because the body they are born in. I wanted that to happen by a zoom out of these two boys who arrive on that playground, which is this place where we are confronted with society in this bigger scale. So there's this zoom out that leaves their unity to make them disappear in this jungle, makes them disappear in this group. That was a very important visual motif for us. And also, I think that what happens is, as these boys slowly get torn apart, as we slowly pull them apart, and I say we because I feel like we live in a society that murders the beautiful friendship between boys. So that's why I say we tear them apart. There's literally a dramaturgy that starts to shift and shape away from each other. It's translated very literally to the fork in the road when these two boys bike together, and then all of a sudden we see them really shift, while before that we had always seen them together. It's in these types of movements and motifs that I think with the cinematographer we try to, and not only with the whole artistic team, we try to find a way to have a sort of unity, have a sort of bubble that then slowly, takes them or tears them into different frames, very literally even different frames. I would say that for the first part, but I think in the second part it's different in the sense that the big thematics of the film, transform in the second part of the film. It's very much about grief and about guilt. And I feel that there we try to stay close to a character that has this armor on, very literally translated by the ice hockey costume. And so we are observing him, observing a character that doesn't want anything to enter and exit anymore, but that is imploding on the inside. And so I feel, or we felt with the cinematographer, that there's this necessity for the camera to linger on his face and try to stay close, even if he's pushing away the world. Like you say, there are plural interpretations of the word close. I think it was an important title for us because it is a reference to the beauty of their togetherness, but it's also something that is questioned in this society because we are so unconditioned to see that intimacy and closeness between these two. But also maybe on a more metaphysical level, is it like this question that I have in life, and maybe also asked for this film, of is it possible to stay close to someone who is, or feel the closeness of someone who is not physically there anymore?
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm glad you brought up quite a few things, but I just loved how you had no fear in letting moments breathe, such as everything that you mentioned, but like Leo learning something, and then we follow him doing work in the field, doing ice hockey, as you mentioned. We know what he's thinking, and you allow us to feel his thinking. So I'm curious about those conversations that you were likely having with your actors when it came to capturing those moments so organically, because they probably didn't have a full comprehension of what it would be like with the musical score and the camera work going in there to be there to support them in those moments.
Well, so our casting process is quite elaborate in the sense that so with the boys that we do see and that we do invite for castings, we split them up in groups. And with every group, we work during the duration of a day. Because I feel with young people, as they have never been in front of a camera, I mean, most of them, they will only dare to show you, and they will only dare to propose things if you allow them time. So time is a very important element, both in the casting as in the rehearsal process. Because I rehearsed for 6 months or over the course of 6 months with these young people. Aiden and Gustav read the script before the last round of casting, because I feel like casting often is about the makers choosing the actors, but I also wanted it to be the other way around. I also really needed to feel that they would connect to what was on paper. And I think, and I strongly believe, that we can learn many things by listening and paying attention to 13-year-olds speak about life. Because I feel that they say things in such a pure, essential, and therefore I find radical way that is uncensored, not expected, not accepted maybe also sometimes, but I think there's an intelligence, especially emotional intelligence, to their words that really reshaped for me after that reading what the eventual film became. Not in the structure, not in the dramaturgy, but in like the nuances. We talked very openly about masculinity because they are two young men growing up. We talked about friendship because they have been heartbroken by friendship. And so there was this very open conversation, and I feel that was the starting point. And then I asked them to never read the script again, which they love because they're like, I won't have to remember any texts. And I think that sparks their creativity. They have already so many things they have to learn or memorize by heart in schools, but I feel like allowing them space to become co-authors of their roles excites them. So over these course of 6 months, what I do is we spend a lot of time together. We watch each other's favorite movies. We go walking by the seaside. We make a lot of pancakes because they love pancakes. And during those moments, we will, I will sometimes ask, like, why do you think this character would do that? But I don't give them the answer. They make up their own answers. And that's fine by me. So they become detectives in their own stories. And then I also bring in a camera very early on, I think after the first month. And I want the camera to become an extension of our togetherness. Like the camera is filming, and I come from a film school that combined documentary and fiction. So maybe there's something that I got from that. I just want them to feel this sort of transparency with the camera. I feel like the camera needs to become this object that they get used to in a way that when we start filming or when we're on set, that sometimes we can play with the fluidity and the boundary between what is just documented and what we have created. And so when, for example, on the flower fields, when we were rehearsing, they worked on the fields. They worked with the machines. That was our rehearsal. And so it's great because they really start to get to know the actions, and everything happens through the movement of the body. I think our rehearsals are always very physical, like the rehearsals of dancers for a dance performance. And then, of course, even the adult actors don't know, of course, what music is going. There's only those things that you can access as an actor, I feel, and those things that are still a mystery. And I think it's important because my biggest task is to never make the actors feel any of the technique. I want them to be able to be free, even if there is a sort of big, tracking shot with like sound and everything, and it's difficult because we're in between the flowers and we had to mow this full lane of flowers and they go fast. I never want them to think of the technique. I want them to think of the moment and their togetherness and all these things. So that is my big task, is keeping that away from them.
I have two big takeaways that I would just love to discuss with you, but I don't have too much time, so I'll probably only get to one. But I wanted to get your thoughts on it because it was what was percolating in my mind following my experience. One was something that we're all taught, but this film is a grand reminder of, which is considering others' feelings and what they may carry home with them, and the importance of extending a hand and having a conversation. This film, as you mentioned, like kind of builds towards one conversation, and it plays out in very human fashion. How would you say this film has shaped your perspective of humanity as it is today? Are you giving more of your time to others, having deeper conversations, and how are you reacting to those who may not have the same understanding as you?
Yeah, I think when I started writing this film, I had to confront myself with the fact that I had pushed away many people that I maybe didn't necessarily want to, but out of fear. And I realized that if I wanted to stop doing that, it would take a lot of realness and a lot of vulnerability. And that was what I had always for the longest time seen as my weakness, something that I tried to hide and something that I tried to cover up and something that I tried to ignore. So I feel like in order to shape and create these relationships that feel deep, go more into sort of profoundness, I needed to be and face this vulnerability as a strength, as a power, which it is, which I'm coming to learn that it is. But of course, I have built up these walls that I'm deconstructing. I'm human, so flawed, and like all of us, sometimes succeeding, sometimes not. And I think it's all about the attempt. It's all about trying and keep reminding ourselves of that we're all trying to do our best here. I hope I can believe in that. And I think this film is an ode to, the fragility of our connections in a world that so often separates us, and maybe a reminder of cherishing them.